Committee meeting for January 6th. I don't think we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll move to introduction of members for the Planning Subcommittee. I'm Erin Panaco, Millville representative.
Tara Larkin, Millville representative.
Harry Goddett, Blackstone representative.
Barry Bolso, Blackstone Selectman representative.
Director of Facilities.
Matt Ernworth, Assistant Superintendent.
Jason DeFalco, Superintendent.
And we have joining us Greg Smalley from DRA.
That's me.
It looks like Sarah just jumped on.
Yeah, I think Sarah's here as well.
Williams Blackstone.
Perfect timing.
And I think we're going to move the approval of minutes to our next agenda. I don't think any of us have an actual copy of those from December 15th.
I wasn't able to find the only one that I was able to find, Tara, was the first. I don't know why I thought I remember you sending them, and now I can't find it in my email.
December 1st, I have two.
I know I updated the November ones, so maybe I got it confused. I'm on my phone, unfortunately, so I'll check tomorrow and resend.
Yeah, it's okay. I apologize if I just couldn't find it. So.
We can just move it to the next agenda too. And then we're moving on to the discussion of the presentation.
Yes, I am pleased to say, Greg and I have done a significant amount of work on a presentation that we've been compiling. And before I turn it over to Greg to kind of walk us through it, I think the concept for this evening was to run through the slideshow presentation, identify who might be interested in speaking to certain sections of the slideshow presentation, and then as a group determining like what groups we're going to send out and where those groups might go and what our next steps are. So when you see the slideshow presentation, we kind of put it together as an entire compilation of all of the things that we're going to be doing. And sorry, I got a little freaked out. I saw Matt joining and I'm like, wait a second, am I joining again? It's Matt Plant. So the slideshow is like 60 some odd slides long. I don't want anyone to get scared when we start if they look at the numbers, that's not what anyone's going to be expected to present or speak to. But we tried to put everything in one place, and then we can kind of divvy it up and make amendments and adjustments as we see fit. Greg, did I do that justice?
Yeah, that wasn't too bad.
Okay, thanks.
So, who's ever hosting this needs to give me ability to share.
You're good to go.
Okay, I'm good to try. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so we should be seeing the presentation. Let's make sure I got the right one here. Nope, wrong one. Hang on a second. Switch to the next one. Okay, bear with me for a second here, folks. I'm not sure if we can share a screen that we're already on. Can we do that?
I believe so. I'm certainly not an expert on this. Jesse, could you maybe help Greg?
Yeah, we see your calendar at the moment, Greg.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying for that.
Do you see a box pop up when you go to share screens, giving the option to pick which screen you want to share.
Okay, now I see it. It wasn't showing up there before.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Jesse.
Sure.
Now we should be seeing a, says in the corner, foundation document, and we'll use that as we go through. And I'm going to do this as a slideshow setup because we can jump around in it a bit more. So as Matt said, we were trying to flesh out and get enough information going in here so that people can contribute to it and take it and work with it. So we've come up with this idea of 7 areas of discussion, and all of this is flexible at this point. This is the work of Matt and I and Scott, and you'll see some of it will look familiar, some of it's kind of new. So our work piece is what the district is doing, what is driving the work of the district. So the vision, our work in action, and the district core values. And the intention behind these slides is to bring to the forefront what the district is doing for the curriculum, for the students, the teachers, and the community as a school district. And what we find is frequently helpful is this portrait of a graduate, what the district is striving to instill and imbue in the student as they go from pre-K all the way through to high school and then on to career or college. And this is the what it looks like, what is the trademarks or hallmarks of a graduate as they go through. So this is all pieces that are coming right from the district, whether they get refined more or work the way they are or pulled out a little bit differently is part of the discussion. And we must focus on our purpose, which is to develop happy, healthy, proficient students prepared for college. We came up with, Matt came up with a BMR student is prepared to enter a global society and must possess future-ready skills and be able to apply them in the technological world that we live in today. So we're trying to push that point across that the students that we're teaching here are going out into the world ready to teach or ready to work, ready to continue learning, and familiar with the tools and methodologies that are used in the world today. And if you take this slideshow as it is and go out and to work with it, if you press the DRA logo in the lower right-hand corner, it takes you back to this slide. And if you press any one of these subjects, it takes you to that subject. So that our work in essence is the background of what the district is doing and why it is undertaking the work that it's been doing for a year. So I've got 3 slides here looking for some input on which one works best. This was a layout of the milestones along the way. I don't particularly favor this one. I think it's a little bit too wordy and doesn't make a real lot of sense to people. I did this one, which is looking at points in time and tasks that were accomplished, and then looking forward to January through April of 22 for the submittal of the SOI. And then a slightly different graphic of the work that was done in between periods of time and how it gets a little bit more focused and a little bit more concentrated as you move out into April of 22 through November of 22. So looking for input on timelines, if there's any of these that work or something that you think works better or differently, you can weigh in on that at anywhere along the line or at the end when we stop to chat about this. Now, educational needs is one that we've kicked around, and this got started for me when way back when Jason was talking about some of the work that's being done with the adjoining neighboring districts. So we were looking for a slide that answers a couple of the questions that came up. One was that statement that the school was good enough for me, it's got to be good enough for nowadays. That's often answered with a slide of a typical 1950s school and moving up to some slides of a more modern school. This listing shows what was the general feeling for teaching approach in the 50s and 60s, very teacher-centric, all in classrooms, conventional technology, subject-based. And now our leading schools are student-centric, project-based, one-to-one technology environments, much, much different, and starts to get under the skin a little bit of that. It was good enough for me. Why is it not good enough nowadays? We've got to get one number on this one, Matt. We put a placeholder there for the number of average number of students to regional VOTEC and other districts because of curricular, extracurricular, and the condition of the buildings and fields. So this is kind of the stake in the sand for this effort of we're losing students because of the educational offerings, and we're losing students because of the condition of the environments that we're teaching them in. Currently, it's a comprehensive high school, offers a career path curriculum, biomedical, robotics, machine learning, visual arts, media, and publication. And it partners with other districts for welding, metal fabrication, health and sciences. If there's anything that we're missing on this, we should get it on there. If there's anything that's said wrong, we should get it correct, obviously. The district would like to, and these were one where we were kind of blue skying this, add additional career pathways, agriculture, environmental sustainability, visual arts, health and nursing. Open the buildings and grounds for community use. It often comes with more so than we already do, or with better amenities or fewer restrictions.
Greg,
And then provide continuing ed services.
Greg, can I just add one piece? So the top bullet points here, we are actually looking into the agriculture and environmental pathway. And we're also doing, which the school committee will hear about on the 13th, but proposing a accelerated learning pathway with a dual enrollment piece between 8th and 9th grade, and then our junior, senior year in early college. So as we think about that, we might want to add that, that bullet in.
Okay. If you can get those over to Matt, Matt can send them to me or put them in.
Sure. Yep.
And if we're currently considering agriculture and environmental science, maybe we move it up to this slide.
Yeah, we're in the early stages of that pathway now, the agricultural one. But the advanced learning and that dual enrollment pathway, there should not be any reason we wouldn't launch that in September.
Okay.
So yeah, like we are excited to share with the school committee kind of where we are with that. So that's a really great opportunity there to be highlighted.
Excellent. Okay, so we'll get that onto the slide. That's good. And then so through that, and then I put in some slides here as these are all examples of schools built in the last 5 years across Massachusetts, and kind of showing what spaces look like now as space out in Taconic High School, where this is a small scale student cafeteria dining space. It serves as a robotics space in the afternoon and into the evening. Collaborative spaces, Stoughton High School. Interactive spaces, Pembroke Elementary. Adaptable, that I believe is Stoughton again. Life Ready is Putnam, Connecticut. Increased interest in food and food prep and nutrition. Hands-on, this was actually a temporary maker space, but pretty indicative of a halfway decent maker space. That's at Wellesley College, sorry. And creative music room in Middleborough, I believe. Student driven, this is a place where students can help one another with computer needs and whatnot. And then finally, authentic, real world stuff that kids are working with. These slides can be left in, they can be used with discretion, they can be taken out, but it's the first time that we're really showing people what your peer districts in the state are actually building outside of Putnam, which is just west of you guys. So we can talk about whether or not these stay in, they don't need to go anywhere. tonight, but
It
Yep,
would be
go ahead.
interesting to juxtapose those with kind of what we have. Like we have the PBS station in an old
Mhm.
classroom with nothing hanging. Like it would be interesting to show, our students are doing the same thing that these guys are. Here's what ours have. Here's what it could look like. I don't know. Be interesting to do something like that.
Yeah, that's a
That is
really
an
good
interesting
idea,
thought.
Jane.
Yeah, I think the visuals are really important, Greg, because even, we're in the throes of this and I see those pictures and it gets me really excited about the work. So, and I'm doing the work. So I can only imagine those that are not would see that oh my gosh, that would be incredible for our kids to have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can get up into your school and photograph some of the spaces, unless you've got someone who can take some good quality photos.
We can,
Middle school does have a room similar to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. The middle school does. If you move forward and you move out of the middle school, you'll lose that space.
Right.
That's a good point, Scott. Okay, let's talk about what we can do in terms of getting some this is what we have,
Photos.
this is what others.
yeah, Greg, you, me and Scott can talk at another point. And
Okay.
we'll make sure we get photos that, to Jane's point, that kind of correlate to some of the things that we're speaking to and the spaces that we're showing.
Mhm.
I like the idea of juxtaposing the two.
Yeah, that can be very powerful.
Even in the cafeteria, we have the tables with the seats attached that don't move, that are 30 people to a table. And,
Yep.
even that kind of stuff next to what it could be it's pretty powerful.
Let's get some science labs, Greg, from the new school, from the new structures to ours. That'd be great.
Okay.
Okay.
Our hexagonal or octagonal tables that are all connected.
Yeah, we actually can get we can get your science labs into here too. That'd be a good one to do. I have, Jane, just to really prove a point, once I took pictures of a prison dining area and contrasted them with the high school, and people were saying the high school dining was fine. It was interesting.
Yeah, there you go. Right. Exactly.
We'll have to
Okay, so let's
discuss
work a
that
little
one
bit more on
further
those.
and decide. Jason and I are both like,
Okay, so we get through that one, and let me jump back now. So that was through, what are you doing? Then we went to facility assessment. Nope. Hang on, wrong one. Hang on, Matt. I gotta get a better. I'm gonna have to do it this way and scroll down through some slides.
oh,
Get
were
the-
some of the links off?
Yeah, we missed a link in there. Okay, so this is where it will start to feel familiar again. What I added into here was who owns it, and so we get through this idea of the fact that the two schools are not owned by the district, and therefore there's some talking to be done, and put in when it was built and the most recent investments in there. And these we may have to finalize a little bit better, but also the amount of land and the size of the building with a floor plan. It's a general run through of what condition it's in, what work has been done, and most of what we see as the pressing work to be addressed in the next probably 2 to 5 years. This is all from the facilities assessment. What I left out of this was photos, which we've been using to familiarize people with the buildings. Not sure if it's needed for this. If people think it is, they're easily put back in. You may recall on December 1st or 21st, one of those two when we met, I had a single slide with 4 photos for each building. So anyone's choice on that one and which way you want to go. But I put the CIP, and this is going to get adjusted as soon as I get a chance to get back through the report and adjust the forecast costs. Matt and I were talking that since since construction costs have escalated so rapidly in this past year, we felt it prudent to go back into the assessment study and adjust costs, which are going to move all these numbers for us. So by the time we really launch this thing, we'll have slightly different numbers and a total overall cost. JFK, the complex. We have minor asbestos remediation, which may be a new item for some people. That's on your CIP to address this coming year. And projected expenditures. Hartnett, I put just one floor plan here. And this is calling it what it is. You need to do the roof, the windows, some of the exterior tile and brick. Of all of this, the flooring and the fields are the easiest ones to do, but there's no surprise that those other items are coming up either. We pushed a lot of that work pretty far out between 2025 and then a jump over to 2040. 2025 might be able to come down if you live with the windows and do the roof, that type of thing, but we'll see where that comes out as we go. And then the high school itself, got to confirm the roof replacement date. I have it as 2016. Want to make sure we get that one right because enough people remember that. And then this is the start of the listing. Pardon the phone in the background. No one ever calls that number. This is a listing of the work, and for this building itself, it goes on for a while. There's that's not even everything that we listed for this building. And then the CIP for that. And then we got to this, and I know we need to do something about the background in this. It's a little bit too forward. It's making it difficult to read, but this is kind of the overview of everything. And we get down to the asbestos. You can schedule the work out, yes, over many years. The projected cost at this point exceeds 60 million. They're going to go up with the current costs. And then there's these three at the end that this only addresses existing conditions. There's no additions or alterations anticipated, and it doesn't address your educational needs. And I'm half tempted to highlight those or bold those out as the salient points of the facility study. So then we jump back over and we go to the demographic and enrollment study. This was just a little bit of background on Jerome McKibben, that since he did not present in person, he doesn't quite have the recognition around town. A little bit of background on demographic forecasts, what they're predicated on, what you use to study that, building permits, planning and zoning, et cetera. What the demographic forecast found and concluded, and we highlighted that 33 unit small home development at 110 Blackstone Street. There's a forecast of 10 to 15 new students from that. I understand there was one other one that people were talking about, but I couldn't pick up where it was. If it is, and we think it's substantial enough or on people's minds, we'll add that into this as another highlighted point. The planning and zoning agendas aren't showing that much commercial activity, and real estate transactions for both residential and commercial are relatively slow, despite the market, and the changes in residential ownership aren't really bringing students in. Did population by age group. So these are two new graphs that we have not used prior. And it's showing that you've got two age groups that are increasing, 75 to 85-year-olds, and then 60 to 74-year-olds. So perfect.
Right.
and everybody else is kind of trailing down. And so this was one way to show it that kind of makes the point that we're starting to age out here, and we're outgrowing the facilities, and we're not going to replace the student numbers based on these projections. And this is overall population. So your population overall stays relatively flat, but you see the bars at the top, which are the oldest groups, get bigger. And this is your 0 through 4, so that's live births. This is your school age kids in that orange line, and your 20 to 29-year-olds who are moving out, and then your 30 to 39-year-olds who are moving out. And you don't start picking people back up until you get up to the 60 to 64s. So that's kind of the tail of the population in town. Jump to enrollment forecasts, kind of restating the pieces that duplicate birth records, planning, zoning, and whatnot, real estate. But then it also considers students who go out of school, out of district schools who come into school, and special needs students and programs that may have a different impact on the enrollment. High school graduation rates exceed kindergarten enrollment. So you're graduating more kids than you're getting in. Enrollment has declined over the past decade, and there's been an increase in the number of high school students opting out. That circles back to the statement we made earlier about losing X number of students per year. And then it points to a gradual decrease in overall enrollment and a potential slight increase in kindergarten enrollment towards the end of the study. We say potential because out past 7 years, that enrollment projection is difficult to see. Even if it does come up, it won't match what you're graduating. So you're still going to end up declining over that 10-year stretch. So this one you've seen before. This is your student age population. The purple line is overall student population, and then broken into the 3 categories down below for elementary, middle, and high. Then we put in these 2 slides that this is where we start talking about options. And I put together this slide of long-term investment, what it means to do a capital project, what the benefits of it are. And these are all mine. So if someone has a different thought on this, please bring it to the table. But we're looking for, and I may reorder these as well, but looking to a long-term investment gives you the ability to provide the appropriate spaces to learn, address your ADA issues, eliminate deficiencies in the sports and athletics, address the space needs that are lacking for music and performing arts at the high school, increase your career path offerings. It eliminates all the CIP items for the existing high school, addresses excess space across the 4 buildings, which I think is an esoteric piece for a lot of people before you get into explaining the options that were considered. And then it maximizes the state grant. When we look at short-term spending, so this is simply really kind of addressing the CIP and maybe doing some work to increase educational offerings. It doesn't necessarily address educational needs. There's very few grants available to defray the cost here. Maybe something for a photovoltaic array or something like that, but very little else except for the accelerated repair grants from the state, which are going to run out. And I think not run out, but you'll start to not qualify for them. And I'm wondering if we want to get that into here as an explanation or a bullet point. But then I was saying under short-term spending, there's some things you really realistically can't address. And it's mostly at the high school, which is the ADA and the MAAB, which is the Mass Architectural Access Board. Replacing the elevator at the high school is near on impossible without a major project. Getting all your stairs to be compliant is a little bit more accessible. You can't get the doors accessible. That's going to be virtually impossible. And the exterior walls at the high school, to take them down and address the water that's infiltrated into them, realistically, I don't think that's one that you're going to take on. Space for physical education, if you compare what you have to the existing MSBA guidelines, you're well under. And then proper facilities for career path curricula, which to get the spaces that are flexible enough to not make you compromise curricula. And then finally, it doesn't address the excess space. So this is those areas in the other buildings that we talk about when we do the options. So we did areas of consideration, and this is what we were talking about in the committee meetings: educational appropriateness, maximize offerings, increase sports and teams, increase club, fiscal efficiency, capital, operational, annual. So how are you spending your money in the most efficient way possible? Not just a year-to-year basis, but year-to-year and over 20 or 30 years. And then operational effectiveness, and that comes down to everything from bus routing to staffing to operation of the buildings. What's it take to maintain the buildings and consolidate to get more operationally effective? And then how do we maximize state and other grants and funding sources? Now, this is all familiar stuff. This was what we went through in early December. And Jason, I still haven't gotten 3D into here. I need a reminder of what 3D was, because I believe that was one that you put on the table and I neglected to write down. Okay. But 4 buildings, 3 and 2. And then right now I've got 4A, which we saw before, the grade alignment, the analysis of it. And the big difference here is the top of the page shows enrollment forecast, then analysis, and then conclusion. And so I did 4A. I can put, and I have 3A, which was one that we studied for more in depth, and the pieces for that. Then I put in 3B, but I have not moved the data sheets over to it yet. So I've got 3A, 3B, 3C, and then it would be 3D. So the question here is, do we want to move all of that data into this to be ready to address someone who says you didn't consider this? And then we did 2A, and I haven't moved the data in yet. And then 2B. And then what we got at the end of this was this big bold statement, and this is just me talking once again. Option 2B, converting FW Hartnett to a pure K-5 and reestablishing a middle/high school approach was agreed to be the most educational appropriate and economically feasible option. That's me making your statement. So if you disagree, I've got no feelings on this, except I think it's a statement that we should make somewhere in here that says definitively this is what the subcommittee voted to do or agreed to do. And then we go into mass. This is a statement of interest. All these are just pared down from what we showed you previously. So we tried to get these into single line bullet points. That is not an invitation, as the MSBA statement. Involves no financial commitment as our statement, so that people understand that this is simply filing a piece of paper. And then these have not changed. This is all what we've seen through December. Rationale, cost actions, cost associations, town cost projections, and the end. So I can stop sharing this, might be better. That wasn't too bad. I hope no one fell asleep. But
A lot of information.
yeah, and I think that's why we called it a foundation document, because you can pull it apart.
Right.
And you know, the folks who want to talk education can focus on that and have the backup. If someone says, yeah, but, well, okay, let me go to that piece. And if we index it the way we do, we just got to get that last link in there. You can actually carry the whole slideshow.
Right.
And just focus on your piece of it.
Greg.
And that's why I think it's okay to have all of the 3A, 3B, 3C, 3D, because you don't have to go through it.
Right.
You know, you just have to pull it up if somebody says, well, what about, well, here's when we looked at that. As for the timeline, I prefer the middle one. The first one was really hard to read, and the second one with the circles was hard to read inside the circles.
Okay.
So if we're having to do some of this virtually, which we may have to do, it's hard to be able to read that.
Yep.
I appreciated everything linked like that, so you can jump around, because each group we meet with, at least over time, will probably have like a different focus that they want to delve into. So I think that being able to kind of move back and forth pretty seamlessly is a great feature, Greg. I'm glad you did that.
Greg, I fixed the link already. Jason, I added the dual enrollment and I highlighted those last few things.
Okay.
While we were working, I was also in the document.
Great. Yeah, the changing the background, I think, is a good idea. As much as I love that map kind of thing, it just, because to your point, it's hard to see the language, the words. Oh, you can get that out. And then the visuals. I think the more visuals, as we touched on, would be really helpful.
Well, I like the idea of the compare and contrast of what you have for learning spaces now to what other districts have is a super strong way to pull that across, whether you show it on the same slide, like this is what we have, this is what someone else has.
Yeah.
And I can give you the names of each one of those schools. So if someone wants to call them up and go see them or something, or we can put them right in the picture.
I think that's a great idea, because it shows it. And what I like about it, most of those were just Massachusetts K-12 schools, other than I think something rather in Wellesley College or wherever it was, in one in Putnam. But I think that's really important. And I think that showing people I think part of the problem is people don't know what to envision. They don't know, right? Like they know what they know. And I think it takes, and we do this with teachers too. You get these teachers out of their own classroom, out of the building, see other, types of learning and instruction. And it's kind of the same concept. And once you see it, then you can kind of create your own vision. But if you don't necessarily have that starting point, it's really tough. So those visuals are just, I can't underscore how much I think those are important.
Okay.
That visual also show, if it's possible, where our school choice students are going, what programs that we don't have that they're obtaining, and the benefit of bringing those students back here financially.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's a great point, Mary. And I don't know how many kids will get back, right? Like once students leave, they're kind of gone.
Exactly, but I think it was fair that the way they sold their new school was the fact that they had so much school choice, building the new school was cheaper.
Right, and I wonder how do we use
to get them.
Exactly, and how do we use and I'm just using that piece as because we might want the message to be stopping the students from leaving, right? Because I think that's where and I think that's what you're saying, Mary, is like how do we show that side by side to try to stop kids from leaving our system.
I'm chomping at the bit because I think that's a great point. And I think right after that slide that says we lose students to this place, and this place, we could have a slide that has the financial amount per student for each place that a kid is going. What's the loss to the district with respect to foundation enrollment for each kid that goes over there, charter school, how much it costs us, and school choice, how much it costs us.
Yeah, so our tax dollars are supplementing other towns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the other one is if you do anything that brings an outplaced special ed student back in, there's a big amount of money that comes with that. And a lot of times that starts at the elementary school level where your elementary school can't accommodate them, so that once they're gone, they stay out. So we can look if you have students like that. And the reality with that is you don't necessarily need to finish the discussion of can you bring them back. You just need to put the number out there of this is what you lose. And people kind of make that connection.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Mary.
Do we have those spaces for special ed in elementary marked off on the new layouts?
You can certainly get them into Hartnett much better than you have them in either of the other two schools.
Okay, good.
Hartnett was built far more for that type of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think we have the space, but Greg, if you remember Sturbridge, that whole first floor was all special needs, and they brought them in from like 7 different municipalities.
Yeah. and that's another piece that you can talk about is the idea of building something so that a special needs student would want to come to you, a program that's not offered somewhere else. So I think the go ahead, Tara.
I'm sorry. I made a mental note on page 41, but I don't have it written down, but I don't remember what it was. I don't know if you want to pop it up again, or if you share that with us, I can always give feedback.
Hang on,
I remember
let me
page
see if I can
41, but I
find
remember
this.
my comment.
That was the facilities needs overview.
Okay, we seeing that?
Oh, yes. So I agreed with you. Oh, good. You already bolded it. Is that you, Matt?
Yes.
I was also going to suggest if you indent those bottom three underneath the projected, it might just pop that those are related. Nothing crazy, just a little suggestion.
You got that, Greg?
Yeah, I popped them up size wise to 2.
I did. I popped them up size wise too.
Okay.
So you made them even bigger. Give me one. You got them?
Yeah. Okay. Anything else that stood out for anybody?
I don't
Greg,
have
one thought.
I made a mental note too for one of the, I think it might be the next slide. Nope, not even the same.
Actually, can I pause you, Aaron?
Yeah.
Greg, can you go back to slide 41? Because I actually have a question. While I'm here, Tara, to your point, maybe moving them over. If I move them over, the bullets get lighter and it kind of, do you think you like it better like this, or should I just move them back and keep them bigger?
Back and bigger is fine. It was the 3 under projected. So I would have left projected to the left and then put those last 3 indented,
Gotcha.
but either way.
I'll fix them.
I think for me, one of the biggest points on that page is that 60 million is only existing conditions. Like that's the P. No, Matt, do that bigger, like you said.
Oh, Tara was
And
saying,
then-
I thought I was.
And then the other 3 points below that indent, like they go to that
Gotcha.
projected cost.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And make this will address only existing conditions like red or something like that. I don't know, but. But I mean, to me, that's the point that catches the most people, or that's what I should say. That's what got Jennifer Gill. It's like, look, if it's going to cost us 60 million or it's going to cost us 100 million, like, what the heck? Let's do, because we're then in a position to make minimal changes on that over time.
So I underlined it, and I think it'll pop more when we change, if and when we change the background. We definitely have to change the background on this slide.
Yeah. What I'm going to try with the background is to take this off of the shared document and put it into the full all singing, all dancing PowerPoint, and I can fade that out more. Because in this shared document, I can't fade it out. So it's been bugging me. But I think the only way to do it is to take it down and put it back in the full document.
Yeah.
Greg, one other thing that might be helpful, we talk about the cost to just keep the buildings the same. Can we put and I know it's going to be difficult to get an exact number to, but what it would take, for the people who say just little by little fix these buildings, like what kind of money would that really be? It's $60 million to keep exactly what you got over the next 20 years or so. But what would it take to make if we end up having to make the high school ADA compliant or the complex ADA compliant, like what kind of dollars is the district looking at for those kinds of repairs? That might be something else that really helps people understand why the 4A, 3A, 3B, C, D, E, F, G options just made no sense to us, because sure, there's a million options you can look at, but the dollars associated with that realistically are going to be way more than building one building and remodeling another.
Okay. Yeah, let me see if we can come up with a number for that. I want to be able to point to something that backs it up to not be just here's a number out of left field.
Right.
So see if I can pull something through the assessment study. Yeah, let me work on that one.
I didn't know if you could use something like a remodeled square foot cost works out to X amount of dollars. You'd have to do a major remodel. So you'd be looking at that kind of a price range to do the complex and the high school. If you ever got ADA or MAAB complaints against you, you'd be talking about having spent X amount of dollars that you would basically get next to no state funding, next to no state assistance for.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. No, did we lose Matt?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm here.
No, not you, the other Matt.
Oh,
He just went on mute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just keep muting myself because I'm grilling dinner and my dogs are going to start barking in the background when I go to cut a steak.
Oh, good. Then my
I
dog,
mean-
my dog barking, I'm going to blame on you then, Matt, because it was already doing.
I'm used to getting blamed for stuff. It's fine.
I'm
What's
glad
your
I
address,
can't smell
Matt?
your
We'll be
steak
right
because
over.
I might start barking.
So Matt, I don't know if this or if, at this point, or Sarah, if we want to talk a little bit about kind of like rollout and how do we want to take this show on the road, and I don't know if we're ready for that part of the conversation or not. Now that we've got kind of the what somewhat moving in the right direction with all the feedback. Because Matt and I have initial conversations in the next couple of weeks with Jennifer Gill, and then we'll be meeting with the Millville Capital Outlay Committee, and Blackstone's Capital Outlay Committee is, I think, the 19th, our meeting with them, just to start conversations and to really help kind of get a sense. And then, we should discuss conversations with the boards of selectmen and the FinCom and kind of, really put this to use, the PowerPoint to use. So I don't know if we're ready for that part of the conversation or if we want to.
Well, hi, yeah, I'm here. It's Sarah. Did we ever decide after our last meeting what our next steps are? I mean, there was some talk about putting this off for a year. And I don't think anyone ever, we never found closure with that. So I wonder what everyone thinks. I mean, what are our next steps? When are we going to vote on this as a school committee? Yeah.
That's a great question. The way that my understanding when we left the last meeting, and I may have this wrong, but I know Millville's capital planning is well underway, and I know Blackstone's just starting theirs. So I know there was some conversation, if I remember correctly, about slowing the process down and maybe waiting a year. I think the thing for us to think about as a group is that this is a really slow process and a long process. And so, Greg, I think you said it in one of our early meetings, at best, we're 5 years out from a new building, right? Somewhere around there. So putting it off another year, my perspective, I don't know if that's the best decision for us. I wonder about how we can fold the work that Blackstone's doing with their capital assessment work, their capital assessment planning, kind of into this as we're going through the process. Because I don't think it'll take them. And Mary, I don't want to speak for you or the committee, but probably a super long time to get that done.
I'm not on capital.
Oh, okay, all right. But we're gonna go ahead, Matt.
I apologize. No, I cut you off, Jason. Go ahead.
Oh no, I just said, but we're going to meet with them, the Capital Outlay Committee, in a couple of weeks. So my sense was we would continue with our process. It's a big assumption that we'll be invited into MSBA, but if we are, we can certainly partner with Blackstone through their process as well. But that's just my opinion. I don't want to speak for the group.
So to that point, Jason, I was going to say, I think, and we obviously need to figure out strategically what groups we want to address. I think it might make sense to right now address the smaller groups with this specific information, like we were discussing. Get out to the capital outlay committees, make sure we get in front of the finance committees, the select boards, and possibly a few other very specific locations, just to try to get the concept brewing within their minds and tee us up just for the statement of interest. And then I think once we get the statement of interest in, we can see where we are. That also gives Blackstone and Millville an opportunity to possibly come up to speed with their assessments that they're looking at doing. And it seems like Millville's in the process and Blackstone is ready to go, but and this might be the extra incentive to move them along. And then, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't disagree with you, Matt, and I'm sorry to interrupt you mid-sentence. I don't necessarily disagree, but I do think we have to go further than that. Like, I think there's definitely, I guess I would call that behind the scenes work that you and Matt and whoever are doing in your meetings as you're moving people through. But I think we have to get in front of the scenes too, and not necessarily with you and Jason, but with school committee members or community members. When I lived in Illinois for years, we're like, how will it play in Peoria? Like, we've got to figure out how it's going to play in Blackstone Millville, because we could submit a statement of interest and we could potentially get approved. And if we haven't developed our allies in our community and not the Board of Selectmen and finance committees, if we haven't gotten, you know, the
support.
The people who attend town meetings, if we haven't gotten a few of those on our side, if we haven't gotten some allies and quite frankly, as I've been thinking about this lately, you know, even some students, even if there are some really vocal, you know, high school students who would go out and talk to their families or their families' friends. I mean, I'm reminded of, you know, when Jason interviewed for this position and talked about, you know, going into people's garages. And I don't know that we're at that stage yet, but I am very fearful, given the reaction we had from the joint meeting, that this thing will get to town meetings and bomb completely. And at that point, we've already gone to MSBA and said, hey, we want to do this. We can do this. And then where are we? So I think we've got to have those people who will stand up on the town floor, who, you know, we need a lot more Matts, not Matt Aaronworth, but other Matt, steak grilling Matt, you know, families to be out there and to just really like believe in this. And we're not going to do that doing the small FinComs and Board of Select and, you know.
Well, yeah, I don't disagree with you, Jane. I probably just didn't word it as well. I was trying to say too, like, what are the target group? I was trying to say like some other smaller target groups that will start spreading that message. And we could go as big as we want. I was just thinking to go whole hog, like public television and all the Facebook lives, like we're not there yet, because I feel like when we start doing that, people are gonna, I don't know, like, I wonder if we do that and then we don't make it into the state, you know, get into the program, what happens? Or
so a couple of things. One of the things you're going to get pushback from both towns is the OPEB, because now Millville's joined forces with our Mr. Watson. They want some contribution to OPEB, and they're going to look for that at this budget season. So that's their sticking point. Second of all, Matt, you're right. We can't go onto mass media yet, but I can tell you from my experience, and Greg, you can chime in. I know Douglas, what they did, they got the parents involved. Right. They went around and they did a register to vote campaign, because most of the new people that moved to town that are putting their students in school didn't register to vote. And so they got that voter group in there. And then another town, and I've mentioned this before, the seniors that went to that school still remember it as a beautiful crystal gem. And, you know, and, oh, you didn't take care of it, it was beautiful. That's not true. Things wear out. So we have a new senior center director starting on the 17th, and Millville has a very active senior center. I would invite the seniors to have lunch at the high school once a month and maybe even offer a tour. So what they used to do in Ashland is they came in for third lunch. They sat with some of the seniors. They loved it. They bought the lunch. They ate the fish sticks, the pizza, and let them see how much that school isn't really working anymore. That's just my take on it. There's other things that we've done in other communities to sell our projects, not always successful, but getting them into the building to see the physical plant is huge.
That's a very good idea, Mary.
Mhm.
Just to jump quickly on something that all three of you have mentioned. So I had an interview on yesterday with, I think it was yesterday, with Lauren Clem. She got a hold of me and said, I finally got a chance to watch the meeting that Greg, she mentioned you, that you're the consultant led. She said it was so informative. There was so much information. But she asked some really interesting questions, which obviously reporters usually do. And she said, with the configuration that you mentioned, is that the direction you're going in? And I kept coming back to the same line that these schools belong to the community. We have to talk to the community. We need to get feedback from the community. I said, if you asked any of us at the beginning of the process, none of us would have said, yeah, 2 schools made sense. We all were kind of at the end of that lengthy process, like, we're really kind of surprised we landed here. And then she asked another question, which I think is more pertinent to this discussion, but it was around, will this pass? She said, will you get this through the voters? And my response to her was, I don't know. We haven't talked to enough people. I'm like, we're so early in this process that we haven't, exactly what you just said, Mary. I'm like, we've really just kind of talked to governing boards. We haven't spoken with parents and parent groups, and we haven't had those types of conversations yet. I'm like, I don't know. But one of the things I think we have to be super thoughtful, which I know we will be, about, and at least with Lauren, and she's usually pretty fair, but there was some discussion around trying to frame this like, this is our plan, my plan, this committee's plan, right? The capital planning, this is what we're doing, and this is what's going to happen. And she said it multiple ways, multiple times, and I kept pushing back. These are the community schools. This is ultimately their decision. We need their input. We want them on this process. They have to be, their voice is the most important voice. So I just think as we think about when we step out into these different forums, whether they're formal kinds of meetings like with Board of Selectmen or Capital Outlay or more informal, that notion of these aren't our schools, they're their schools, right? Like that, these belong to the students and families we serve. I think we need to keep beating that drum. A, it's true, and B, we really believe that wholeheartedly. But C, it's their children's experience that I think is really going to count. So I just wanted to share that because I think the story is going to run next Thursday. I don't think it ran today, so I think it will be in next Thursday's paper. And you never know. You never know how they're going to kind of lay out, feedback from an interview. But I think if we can stay on message because it's the right message and it's how we're kind of operating, I think it's important.
So if I can add, Lauren is very fair. Lauren's also predominantly Rhode Island, and Rhode Island education system has just started to adopt the Mass School Building Authority program.
It's so different, Mary. And she lived as a resident of Rhode Island and seeing what I just had to go through for them to put in, new water pipes at the high school. It was ridiculous. We had to vote for it. It was crazy. But she, I explained the process to her. And she actually said, Greg, your overview was incredibly helpful because she's not super familiar with the Massachusetts process. She is more Rhode Island. So that's a really good point. And I was explaining to her just how slow it is. And how lengthy the process can be. So I hope that she was able to capture that. But she did say, Greg, that your explanation was really helpful.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. And if she's looking to talk or wants to get a further insight, give her my number and email address. I'll certainly talk with her. Perfect. And I know MSBA will chat with her if she calls and said, I'm just trying to understand your process. Their PR people will certainly talk with her.
That's great. I appreciate that, Greg.
So one of the things that Jason and I spoke about, and I said it to Jason, this is just my thought. People on this committee probably know the politics of the towns better. But to the point I was making earlier about the towns and their process, my guess is it doesn't, like, we can go through our process. We obviously want to drum up as much support as we can. But in my mind, even if we get accepted into the program, if the towns don't know what they're doing with their properties and what their plan is, by the time we go to the town floor to ask for money, it'll never pass. So honestly, even if we got accepted into the program, if the towns are not ready to do anything with the buildings that we're potentially returning, my guess is we would probably have to decline the invitation or say, the vote and or bring it to vote. But my guess is that the vote wouldn't go through. I really see this as, to Jason's point, this isn't like our little project. Our schools belong to the communities, and we serve the kids and the families of the communities. It needs to be, in my opinion, a larger scale plan. And when everyone sees that and says, okay, this is a costly process. It's $100 million or however much it's going to cost in the end. It's saving us these expenses on the buildings of the schools. It's stopping us from wasting money, but it's also, not only is it gaining us these two much higher quality educational facilities, we're going to get this out of it with respect to town safety, fire, whatever. We're going to get this complex, senior center. I feel like if we're able to collaborate and put it all together into one plan, that's how it will sell to everyone.
I think my concern with that would be, once we hand those buildings over to them, they're gonna wanna know how much money they're gonna have to put into those buildings for the future needs.
Those questions have already come up, and the way I address it is, first the school declares it surplus, and then the town decides what's the best thing for the town. Do they sell it? Do they renovate it? Do they have an alternate use for it? It's another step in the process.
Yeah, Mary, Lauren asked me that too. So I know there's conversation out there about that, because that was one of the points that she brought up and said, well, what would you recommend the towns do? And I said, you got to talk to them. It was, that would be their building. I don't know.
Because I think the taxpayers are gonna look at, if my taxes are gonna go up $178 or $87 per thousand, how much more is it gonna go up once they start renovating those buildings?
Or do you do like they do in gateway cities? You hire a developer to come in and you do a private partnership development and make senior housing. So it doesn't cost the town anything, and it goes back to the town after. There's a lot of things you can do.
Mary, I think it comes back to what we were saying earlier. It's like vision. People need a vision. They need they need to know options. They need to know that, sometimes it always feels like when you're going through something, you're the first person to ever go through it, right? And we're not. So I think those conversations are equally as important on your end too, in the capital outlay, committees, and making sure that people are armed with the information they need.
I certainly want to be clear that I'm not suggesting we're involved in the decision making of what happens with that building. I just am making the point that I know if I were to go to a town meeting in my town and we were to talk about this stuff and there were buildings that were getting surplused, people would want to know what's going to happen with those before they agreed to pay money to do something to these buildings. They'd want to know what's happening as a bigger picture.
And I agree completely. I just want to caution us. I mean, it's taken us, 2.5 years or 2 years to get here. The towns aren't going to get there in 3 months. By the time,
I think they need to look at it open-ended, that there's multiple possibilities and the best one for each community will come out. We can't have an agenda saying, oh, Millville needs a town hall, Blackstone needs a senior center.
Right.
It's got to be, is that the best fit for that building?
Yep.
Well,
But even if they could start thinking of possibilities, and then if we end up going to town meeting during the conversation, I just feel like we're going to need the town boards to say, we can do something with these things. We're going to make something of them, or we're going to sell them and make this money for the towns, or we're going to, build this development, something. And again, to your point, Mary, it may be years before they actually decide what they're actually going to do with them. But I just, if we go by ourselves and say, yep, we're just going to give the buildings back to the towns, I don't know what they're going to do with them. Everyone's going to say, why would I pay for that?
Well, there's a couple of things to consider here. That if you file the SOI, you have until April to file it, which gives you a chance to start to get a measure of the towns and what people feel. You then have till somewhere in November to pull it back without any real political harm, because that's when MSBA would shortlist. So that's giving you effectively 11 months to get a feel for the community. You can then say to the towns, if we go forward and if this gets approved, we're not moving out of those two buildings for another 3 or 4 years. So you got a long time to figure out what to do with that. And the town's going to change in that time. So it's really the first threshold is to get the town to acknowledge that, we probably have a use for that. So Millville's already acknowledged that. Said, we could probably find a use for the school. If Blackstone were to come along and say, we're not sure we have a town use, but we're really intrigued by this public-private partnership to develop it. Let's explore that. You just really need to get them to the point where they're not saying, no, we don't know what we're going to do with it, so we don't want to be part of the discussion. And that's kind of the target for the next 4 or 5 months, is to get people to say, yeah, I could probably do something with that.
I think Blackstone definitely has some ideas, but I think they get past the personal agendas and decide
realistically, we haven't gotten many of them to the point where they're willing to admit that the high school needs to be replaced. So
That's a fair point.
And I think
part
part
of
of
get them in there. They got to get in the building. That's look at the tour you did for the selectmen. That sold it.
Yep. I think Mary's right. Not to keep beating this drum, but those visuals are that's awesome to see. To see the way the students are sitting and meeting and working and that's not out of some catalog. That's at Stoughton. You know what I mean? That's not some private.
Those districts would gladly host a tour. You guys or anyone in town to come see those schools.
Okay.
Of course, we just said people can't go in the schools, but
hey. No, we got a
couple of weeks. We're gonna get to the other side of this in a couple of weeks.
That was great.
The Lions Club is doing bingo at Millville Senior Center. Have them move it to the high school.
Yeah, Mary, we'll do fish sticks and pizza sticks after the.
I know that's an old-fashioned lunch, but the seniors got a real kick out of interacting with the younger generation.
So the seniors go to Millville. Pre-COVID for lunch.
I don't think our insurance premiums could handle the seniors coming into our buildings right now.
Well, the cafeteria is the first level.
That's true.
They want to be with the younger people. They don't want to be old.
No, of course.
Greg,
I want to be with the younger people.
Greg, what are the just to kind of move this forward, if the group's okay? Where do we go from here?
Well, I think you've got the right talking points. We can finalize this thing, and this can be a living document. You can always add to it. We get it refined a little bit, get all the stuff into it. You're starting properly with getting the communication going, finding the people that have or will give you an opening to be sympathetic, empathetic with what you're trying to do, and maximize those people. So you generally start with your smaller meeting, find your friends, identify who they are, move it out into a bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you start with the things that Mary's talking about, get people into the pool, get into the social clubs and whatnot, get your kids talking about and create some buzz. I think you test the waters with your state reps on, hey, if we submit an SOI, will you support it? Will you help us with it? You have to withdraw it. Will you be there for us? And the worst thing that you can do is put it in and then lose the vote. If you put it in and lose the local vote, that's going to hurt. But if you pull it in, put it in, and then midway through you call up Jack McCarthy or your state rep calls McCarthy and says, we just need to pull that back. We don't have the town behind us yet. That's going to hurt far less than going forward on your own and failing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Did have that initial conversation, Greg, just so you know.
Good. Yeah, this is when it gets personal. Everybody's got to find a friend who has two friends, who has two friends, who has two friends. And it's not going to be without pain. That's for sure. But you've got a better timeline than most towns have. Most towns are just kind of, okay, now what do we do? You're going at this with something that doesn't keep me awake at night.
That's good to hear. Jane, I really liked what you said about the parent piece and like finding those parent voices and
or even students or, just let the, people who really see, I'd love to find some, I mean, maybe Jill can help us with this, but even some, students with disabilities who are going to have to go into that high school and go up the elevator that doesn't fit them and another person, or tell their personal stories.
Go get recent college grads to come back and say what the difference was between where they were and where they are in college, and majority will come back and go, that was a big step, that was a world of difference.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was wondering if we could even get like students from the vocational schools or other schools to come back and say why they left the district.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Of course, we'd have to screen them first to see why they left the district.
I heard it was the head custodian at the middle school. The kids didn't
That's why I left.
Yeah, it was pretty mean.
Okay. So Greg, it sounds like we're moving.
We have our next meeting. I don't have any further meetings from this date, but I may not have updated my calendar. Do we have our next meeting on the calendar?
I don't think I do either.
Let's see. I can do a quick search and see.
I know we're full in January, so we'll move into February.
No, yeah, I have tonight, Aaron. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's the next piece. We need to get a few more on our calendar so we can
keep this moving.
Divvy up the slideshow, I think.
So in January, we have the 2 capital outlay conversations.
Yeah, January's full. Well, let's look at February. We have the town meetings is what you were saying, right, Jason?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we be thinking about, well, yeah, I guess I'll hold that. I'll wait to pick a date.
February 9th is that second Wednesday, if we go back to our original Wednesdays in February.
Yeah.
I have a department meeting.
I'm sorry?
I have a department meeting.
Oh, okay.
So I will be late, but feel free to start without me.
Is the second too early?
The second doesn't work for me. I'm out of town at a business conference.
Okay.
Could you start later on the 9th and start at 6 o'clock instead of 5:30?
Would that allow you to get there, Sarah?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. We could do that.
Mm-hmm.
So do we want to book 6 to 8 on Wednesday the 9th?
Yeah, that works for me.
All right. I can send that out.
Tentatively in person, or will it be virtual? Are we tentatively virtual?
I'll add a video link, but let's say hopefully we'll plan on it being in person. I won't say that it's virtual, but we'll have the link in there just in case.
Okay.
And I'll put in the invite in person until if and when that changes.
Then Matt, can we get this slideshow out to everybody so they can?
I could do that
can
right
read through it,
now.
mark it up.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That way we can maybe start the next meeting with
Sure.
recapping.
Do you want me to share this actual working document, or do you want me to download it as a PowerPoint and send it to everyone?
I think you and I and Scott should be the only ones on this online one.
Okay.
So I think we share it otherwise.
Yep. All right. Would it be better for people as a PDF or a PowerPoint?
A PDF, I think, is easiest.
It's better. Okay.
I would do PDF because people can edit PowerPoints. I
Yep.
can do either, but you want it a solid fact.
Yeah. Send it as a PDF. People can print it and mark it up, or just annotate it and send it.
Okay.
So what we mostly want to do is find the piece that you're most comfortable with, that you think you could most lead the charge of in a conversation, and then the pieces that don't work for you, and how you might say something differently. And this has to be your voices when you get out there.
I think having it in front of us for some time would be good to
Oh, absolutely.
be able to.
Yeah. I mean, my trick is I print it out and I give it to my wife, and I say, "Can you read through this and tell me what does make sense and what doesn't make sense?" And she's pretty critical, but I get too close to it to understand that what works and what doesn't work. And
All right, and then the next piece of our agenda is public forum, but I don't think we have any. Was this live streamed anywhere? I don't even know if we were live.
I believe it was live streamed.
Was there a chat feature? I don't.
It's live stream, but there's no one chatting.
Okay, perfect. And then adjournment is next, but are there any other comments or feedback before we?
Did we want to make any more dates, or just go with the 9th?
I feel like on the 9th, we'll have, after visiting the two towns, we'll have a better feel on where we might be heading, and we'll know if we're going to be in person or virtual.
Right.
So maybe
Mhm.
hold off until the 9th.
Sounds good.
Trying to see, can
Unless anyone really needs to fill their calendar.
Pretty full.
I?
All right, so then I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'm sorry that I'm being a little quiet, everyone. I'm sending this to everybody and inviting everyone to the next meeting. So
Well, we
have
appreciate
all-
those invites. It attaches right to the calendar, so.
Yeah, so that's why I'm trying to get it all done, so that's why I'm being quiet. So I apologize.
All right, motion to adjourn.
I will second that motion.
Motion made by Mary, second by Matt. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
Stay safe tomorrow.
Perfect.
Yes, everyone, please.
yeah, be careful.